This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Nermeen Sheikh is in New York. As American consumers flood Apple stores to buy the new iPhone 5, thousands of Chinese workers staged a one-day strike Friday at the Foxconn factory, known for poorly treating workers who help make Apple products such as the iPhone. The group China Labor Watch says up to 4,000 Foxconn workers walked off the job in protest of new employee demands, including working through a holiday that began last week. Foxconn also allegedly raised overly strict demands on product quality without providing worker training for the corresponding skills, leading to high levels of stress. This is what one Foxconn worker told a CNN reporter earlier this year about her experience. She preferred to remain anonymous so as not to lose her job.
In 2013, China was named the #1 country in the world for exports. This is a result of the tremendous growth in exporting the country has experienced, as China has increased its exports by 84% since 2009. More specifically, Hong Kong's Port Harbor has become one of China's main ports of shipment due to the fact that it is much more westernized than the rest of mainland China. As China continues to grow, the labor conditions and work environment has become a topic of discussion for many people. There exists an oversupply of uneducated workers that are known as mobile workers because they move among different provinces, typically from rural to urban areas. This population of workers can become more easily exploited by future employers because labor contracts are not required, meaning that they're also not required to be insured by employers that seek them out. Therefore, labor issues can arise such as unfair treatment of workers, lower wages, and harsh working conditions. This issue tends to be more in place in the mining, manufacturing, and construction sectors of labor. However, we were fortunate enough to see both sides of the Chinese work environment in both Hong Kong and mainland China. When visiting Toll Global Forwarding inside of ATL Logistics, our team thought it was interesting that everyone in our group was required to wear a reflective vest when walking through certain parts of the distribution center. Research performed on the company shows that ATL Logistics Hong Kong maintains daily security regulations throughout the distribution center, from 24-hour camera surveillance throughout the building to the doors in the facility being only open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. In addition, a worker at ATL must have a security key card to get in. One thing we noted was the dramatic difference in regulations and conditions between the distribution centers we visited versus the manufacturing centers we visited. Hong Kong and mainland China had extremely different work environments. When entering mainland China for our visits to the Nike factory, also known as Dean Footwear, and the Polygroup factory, we noticed a large change in infrastructure within the various towns we passed through, as well as labor conditions for the various assembly lines contained within each factory. A couple of interesting points to bring up are that at the Nike factory, we did not see any warning signs and were told not to take any pictures of anything beyond the main office. After heading into the first building, we were exposed to the realities of assembly line labor that we were not so exposed to in America. But in the Chinese workforce, this job seems fairly common. There were rows and rows of people lined up working machines, stitching shoes together, gluing soles to the shoes, and completing any other necessary tasks in order to put together a pair of Nike shoes. After seeing some of the working conditions, we looked further into the process of Chinese workers' compensation, which is actually fairly similar to the United States. The worker must be diagnosed by an official health authority, and they must be verified by both health and social security authorities that the incident actually was work-related. They then must assess how badly the worker was injured or is ill, and as a result, they calculate the amount owed to the worker for his or her compensation due to the cause of injury or illness. Most states in China require workers' compensation insurance for all employees, whether full-time or part-time. Sometimes a minimum requirement of 3 employees in a company is all that is necessary to be eligible for workers' compensation insurance. After leaving the Nike factory and seeing the assembly line in the Polygroup factory, the working conditions did seem much nicer in Polygroup than they did in Nike. The Nike factories were not air-conditioned and remained partially outside, while the Polygroup factories were more well-kept and their workers were wearing matching uniforms and appeared to be dressed and groomed much better than the Nike factory workers. Another example of this is the fact that many polygroup workers seem to have one sleeve on one arm so that their arm would be protected from getting rubbed by Christmas tree branches that were passed down the tables for assembly. In addition, some workers also wore earplugs and protective eyewear. Chinese labor laws follow a strict format much in the same way as labor laws in the United States are laid out. Workers are not to work more than 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, unless overtime is approved by a higher authority. In addition, if a worker remains at a company for more than a year, he or she is allowed to take vacation time with pay. Lastly, safety regulations for the workplace call for a highly desirable system for occupational health so that workers' safety and well-being are not compromised. It is interesting to keep this in mind after seeing what we saw in the Nike and the Polygroup factories, because by American standards, those types of jobs would probably not pass safety regulations. However, in a radically different culture such as China, this type of work environment for assembly work seems to be the norm.